Thank you for being here, and I hope everyone's having a good time so far. I'm John Acebes from the Philippines, and before I begin, I'd like to thank everyone from Whale Trust, especially Emma, for inviting me to participate in Whale Tales 2023. I have participated in Whale Tales last year, but only virtually, so I'm very happy and excited to be here in person. I'm here to share our story, working on humpback whales in northern Philippines. Our story is not very long compared to stories of researchers working on humpbacks here in the US, for example, or even in Japan. But it is a story of a lot of ups and downs and detours and delays while navigating the sort of complex, not so easy seas of whale research and marine conservation in the Philippines. That's why I entitled my talk, Balancing the Banca. Let's start by locating the Philippines, but I'm sure you already know where we are. So we work in the Babuyan Islands, and it's a group of 5 islands in the northern Luzon, Philippines. It's about a little over 8,000 kilometers west of Hawaii, around 992 kilometers south of Okinawa, and about 2,600 kilometers west of the Mariana Archipelago, and only 493 kilometers south of Taiwan. The Babuyan group of islands is composed of 5 main islands: Camiguin, Calayan, Dalupiri, Fuga, and Babuyan Claro. The nearest island from the mainland Luzon is only about 50 kilometers. Humpback whales breeding in the northern Philippines is a fairly recent discovery, as Jim already mentioned earlier. Until 1999, the Philippines was not even in the map of historical breeding grounds of humpback whales in the western North Pacific. The closest known breeding ground of humpback whales was in southern Taiwan. This is where humpbacks were hunted from about 1920 to 1967. In recent years, humpback whale sightings in Taiwan have been very few and far between. Humpback whales were also recorded in the Mariana Archipelago, but back in the 90s, sightings were so uncommon that they thought that they were just wayward whales. This area, the Babuyan Islands, is now what we refer to as the Babuyan Marine Corridor. It is a marine ecosystem with very high cetacean biodiversity and very rich marine life that a lot of communities depend on. As I mentioned, compared to other areas in the world, research on humpbacks is very recent, very young in the Philippines. It began only in 1999, and with an encounter of a mother and calf escort off the waters of the island called Fuga, part of the Babuyan Island chain. Although locals have known that these whales have been visiting their waters for many, many years, it remained unknown to researchers and scientists, including scientists in the Philippines. After that encounter in 1999, WWF-Philippines sent a team of researchers to embark on the first ever humpback whale research expedition in 2000, and I was part of that team. I led a team of whale researchers, but we're actually just biologists, veterinarians. There was one engineer and a photographer. None of us have ever seen a humpback whale in real life. Having conducted interviews on the coast of the Babuyan Channel, and I had the most knowledge about the islands and the living conditions there, but I've never even set foot on any of those islands before then. Our objective back then was to survey around all the islands, document all the cetacean species that we can find, and hopefully document humpback whales. This group of islands is under the jurisdiction of 2 municipalities, and there are over 17,000 people living there. 2 out of 4 of the islands had electricity. but very limited, running only at night for about 4 hours in only a few houses in the community. There was no mobile reception in any of the islands, which meant we were out of communication range as soon as we leave the dock from the mainland in northern Luzon. Until now, there are still no hotels, no rooms for rent or campsites. We lived with 2 Coast Guards stationed there in their little hut. There was no electricity, no plumbing. We cooked our meals over a wood fire stove and washed ourselves in the nearby stream. We surveyed around the island every day. We would survey around the 4 main islands, staying on one island for a few days and then moving on to the next. We first surveyed around Fuga Island. That's where humpback whales were first confirmed to occur. There were no whales. We decided to go to the other island in the east, in Camiguin, and try our luck there. After 5 days of surveying around Camiguin, we saw nothing but dolphins. So on the 5th night, while we were gathered around the lamp with our neighbor fishers, one of them actually told us that he would go fishing at night and just a few kilometers off the coast, and he would hear this eerie bellowing sound coming from the sea. And he said at first it would scare him, and the way he described it is it sounded like a cow. So we were thinking, okay, that has to be a humpback. So the next day, he took 3 of us on his small fishing boat to the spot where he would usually see a whale. We got there, turned off the engine, and waited, looking out at sea. And within a few minutes, that was not the actual recording, unfortunately, obviously. So you can just imagine how we all felt at that time. It was our first time to hear a humpback whale sing. And within a couple of minutes, a whale surfaced about 100 meters from us. That was our very first humpback whale sighting. And the rest, as they say, is history. That year, we managed to survey 4 islands out of the 5, photographed humpback whales, mothers, calves, singers, competitive groups, and documented 4 other species of cetaceans. We were able to make our first humpback song recording as well. So it wasn't bad, no? For a group of unexperienced researchers on board a wooden outrigger boat in far-off group of islands in the northern Philippines. And the following year, in 2000, we were able to take the first 9 photo ID fluke photographs of humpback whales in the Philippines. And we were able to collect our first slough skin samples and biopsy samples from humpback whales. It wasn't exactly smooth sailing from then on because we struggled like any other research project with limited funding. We would have funding for 1 season and none on the next. We started out with borrowed equipment using our own personal cameras and computers. We would have electronics and data sheets falling in the sea, equipment breaking down in the middle of the season. With only 1 to 2 paid staff, we had to deal with training volunteers every year because we need people to help us. Most of these volunteers have never even been on a small boat, let alone seen a dolphin or a whale. So it was very challenging. But from our very rough and small beginnings, we managed to keep on sailing. When WWF-Philippines ended their project in 2006, I, together with a few other former volunteers and friends, decided to continue the work. Through a small grant and contributions from volunteers, we managed to organize the first humpback whale survey independent of WWF in 2007. From then on, we continued working towards achieving pretty much the same goals as the original WWF project. And today, the Humpback Whale Research and Conservation Project is run by our nonprofit organization called Baliena.org. Baliena means whale in Filipino. So we are a small nonprofit. Our mission is to support the conservation of cetaceans and their habitats in the Philippines. And we aim to achieve this through participatory research, advocacy, education, and capacity building for the empowerment of the local communities there and other relevant stakeholders. So what do? We monitor the status and distribution of humpback whales in the Babuyan Islands through photo ID mainly and doing the boat surveys. But in addition to that, we do record songs. We don't analyze them. Jim does that for us. And we also take biopsy samples when we can for genetic analysis. I'm not going to talk about songs because I don't know anything about songs. And if you're going to be on the Benefit Whale Watch with me, please don't ask me about songs. I don't know anything. Aside from that, we also assess the potential threats to cetaceans in the area. So what do we know about the humpbacks in the Philippines? We do know that it is considered as part of the Asian stock with a population that's been estimated of about 1,000 animals. It's been recognized as a distinct population segment. It does remain threatened in some areas where they're found, including the Philippines. We currently have 246 animals in our fluke catalog. So far, we have documented them visiting the Babuyan Islands as early as February up to as late as May. But we think they must, similar to Hawaii and other breeding grounds, they must be found there as early as January, maybe, until May. But we never get to cross to the islands earlier than February because it's very rough there with a lot of strong winds. We do get an average of about 100 humpback whale sightings every season. And many of the whales that we see do return every year. So we do get a lot of resights. Okay. Many whales that winter in the Philippines also winter in Okinawa and Ogasawara in Japan. And based on our most recent matching efforts, we have 100 matches with Okinawa and about 86 matches with Ogasawara. There is about the same number of whales that move between the Philippines and Ogasawara and the Philippines and Okinawa. But we do get whales that visit Hawaii. Unfortunately, I don't know exactly where in Hawaii these whales were seen, but we have 4 matches, and one of them, the one on the top left, is what we call PH053. It was seen in Hawaii in 1994 and was seen in the Philippines in 2003. The second one was seen in Hawaii in 2005 and seen in the Philippines the year before that in 2004. And the other one was seen in 2005 in the Philippines and last year here in Hawaii. And then the last one at the bottom right was seen here in Hawaii in 1987 and 88, and then in the Philippines in 2006. I mentioned earlier the Mariana Archipelago. There is now ongoing monitoring there, and we have found one match with them. For the feeding, most of the whales, as mentioned earlier by Jim, from the Philippines summer in Kamchatka and Chukotka in Russia. But we have had a match with Alaska. So what we do in the Philippines is pretty much the same as what humpback whale researchers do here in Hawaii, but with a few Filipino modifications and without the beautiful underwater photographs and fancy equipment. We don't have any of that. We use a local wooden outrigger boats which were originally intended for fishing, but have been slightly modified for us. And being in a very remote, relatively remote area in the country with very limited facilities, we are only able to visit and stay on the islands for a few weeks every season because there are no regular ferries or we can't fly there. Yeah, so we have to rent a boat just to be able to cross. So it's very challenging just to be able to cross and even leave. So we have only a very small window every season where we can go and stay. So to be able to live in a very beautiful place is both a luxury and a challenge for us. We don't just do research. Our long-term goal is to have the Babuyan Marine Corridor protected, not just for the whales that are migrating there, but also for the conservation of the entire marine ecosystem of the corridor. And in order to achieve this goal, we are working towards the protection of the whole corridor, increase the locals' awareness on conservation, and increase their capacity in managing their marine and coastal resources. We do encounter a lot of challenges. Probably one of the main challenge, and similar to every organization probably in the world, is irregular and short-term funding, which precludes other challenges. Marine mammal research or any wildlife research and conservation is not exactly the priority of our government. There's this disconnect between development and conservation. So for example, the first offshore mining was approved fairly recently, and mining has begun within the Babuyan Channel, about 15 to 20 kilometers from shore. Fuga Island, the island where humpbacks were first confirmed to occur in the Philippines, has been for a while, but we were worried that it's going to be serious this time, that they're planning to develop it into a city. So there would be resorts, hotels, casinos, and golf courses. It is an important bird area. It is a marine key biodiversity area. So there's a lot of even endemic species found on the islands, and it is an important marine mammal area. The entire marine ecosystem of the Babuyan Channel is under a lot of stress and threats from human activities, such as destruction from and degradation of the habitat through dynamite and cyanide fishing. Not a lot as it was 20 years ago, but there's still some. Pollution, black sand mining, and unregulated coastal development. Marine pollution especially has increased considerably in the past 5 years. Marine debris such as discarded fishing gear and ropes are threats to cetaceans found in the area. To help mitigate or address these threats, we increase local conservation awareness by doing a lot of educational outreach work, mainly in schools, but we also visit dive operator shops on the mainland and also other coastal communities. We also produce a lot of information materials and brochures, and we help engage the community in managing their resources by conducting a lot of capacity building activities. We also help implement or at least initiate supplemental livelihood activities such as sewing of toys as souvenirs for tourists. And then lastly, we also do a scholarship program. We initiated a scholarship program a few years ago for the young people who live on the islands. We have supported 3 college students who've graduated already. Currently, we only have 1 college scholar, and he's already in his junior year. There are a lot of opportunities. So despite all the challenges, we have managed to persist, and our humpback whale project is the longest continuous cetacean research project in the country, in the Philippines. In terms of opportunities, compared to the time that I started in this field, there are a lot more younger people, like students, interested in getting into the field of marine mammal science, which is amazing. Every year we get students asking us if we have internship programs or wanting to volunteer with us. So we get people volunteering for us from all backgrounds, all over the country and the world, wanting to volunteer. With social media right now, we are able to reach more people and are able to share what we know about marine mammals in our country and the threats that they face. With new technologies and research collaborations, we are able to do more and know more about these animals. So we've definitely come a long way from surveying on tiny fishing boats on remote islands, although in some places we still do that, only with slightly bigger fishing boats and mobile phones. But there's still a lot more that needs to be done, and with opportunities to share our work and collaborate, such as here now, it can be done. We do need help, and there are many ways that you can. You can support our work and help us to continue doing what we do by purchasing our fundraising merchandise, like the shirt I'm wearing today. And we also have long-term volunteers wearing it right now. So you can also virtually adopt a humpback whale. We have an Adopt a Whale program. So for only $50, you can virtually adopt one of the humpbacks that visit the Philippines. We will also appreciate in-kind donations, such as equipment and school supplies, and also cash donations for our scholarship program. Being a small nonprofit NGO, to sustain our work, we always have to find ways to keep us going. And one way is to take paying volunteers to help us with the research. You can volunteer to join our surveys, and I guarantee it is nothing you've ever experienced before. It's definitely not like here in Maui. So our volunteers come from all over the world, as I mentioned, from very different backgrounds and cultures. And volunteers not only help us collect data on whales, but they also help us do our educational outreach. If you have any questions about volunteering or what it's like to volunteer with us, one of our long-term volunteers is somewhere in the audience. He's also wearing a shirt like this. So Tim, you can ask him anything you want about. Hopefully he says only good things about us. And yes, please come up and talk to us. You can also support us by following us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, maraming salamat po. Mahalo.
Okay, we have time for a couple questions if there's any. Any questions? Oh.
We normally take on 6 per leg. We used to have 3 survey legs a season, but this season we only have 2 legs, so about maybe 15 at most every season. It's similar, but slightly higher. We used to take temperatures all the time, so I think the highest we've ever recorded is like 27 degrees Celsius. But the waters, I was going to mention, our waters are nothing like what you have here. It's not very clear. There's a lot of suspended particles. They're live animals, they're not trash or anything like that. But so we can't get photographs like that. We've tried, not that we haven't. And the currents are quite strong. So we don't do underwater photography at all. But we haven't really tried as much as you have here, but the conditions are very different. But someone asked about the months. We do take volunteers for our surveys between the months of late February until late April. Sure, please.